All right, I want to talk to you about something that so many of us get wrong when it comes to breakups. You see, when a relationship ends, there's this natural tendency to focus on what we lost, to ruminate on what could have been. And while it's completely human to feel hurt, to feel betrayed, or even to feel like we've wasted time, there's one mistake that people make over and over again that only makes the pain last longer. And that mistake is turning the breakup into an identity crisis. What do I mean by that? Let me explain. When someone walks away or when things don't work out, we often start telling ourselves a story. I wasn't enough. I wasn't lovable. No one will ever love me the way they did. We internalize the breakup as something that says more about us than it does about the relationship itself. But that's not just painful, it's a lie. Here's the truth. A breakup isn't a reflection of your worth. The biggest breakup mistake people make is believing that the end of a relationship is a reflection of their worth as a person. When someone leaves or when things don't work out, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that you weren't enough, that you weren't lovable, or that you'll never find love like that again. This is the mistake that prolongs the pain and makes the healing process so much harder. It's not just the loss of the relationship that hurts, but the story we start telling ourselves about why it ended. We internalize the breakup and make it personal. We believe it says something fundamental about who we are, when in reality it says far more about the dynamic between two people at that point in time. The truth is that a breakup doesn't define you. It doesn't mean you are unworthy of love or that you did something wrong. Sometimes relationships end because two people are no longer in alignment. Their paths diverge, their needs change, or perhaps there were issues in the relationship that were never truly resolved. But none of these reasons are a reflection of your value. They are simply circumstances, and circumstances change. What doesn't change is your inherent worth as a person. You are still you, even after the breakup. You were a whole person before that relationship, and you are still a whole person now. The mistake we often make is believing that when the relationship ends, so does our sense of identity. We feel lost. We question who we are without the other person. We convince ourselves that we need them to feel complete, but this is an illusion. You were never incomplete to begin with. The relationship may have been a significant part of your life, but it wasn't the entirety of who you are. Losing a relationship doesn't mean you've lost yourself. You still have everything you had before the relationship started. Your strengths, your passions, your dreams, your ability to grow and love again. One of the biggest traps people fall into after a breakup is the tendency to glorify their ex in the relationship. We start to romanticize the past and remember only the good moments. We put our ex on a pedestal, forgetting their flaws and the reasons why the relationship didn't work. This creates a distorted view of reality and makes it even harder to move on. The truth is that no relationship is perfect. Your ex wasn't perfect. They had their own issues, insecurities, and shortcomings, just like anyone else. By idealizing the past, you are holding yourself back from seeing the breakup for what it really was, an opportunity for growth and a chance to learn more about what you truly want and need in a relationship. Another common mistake is seeking validation from the person who left. We often look for closure or some kind of reassurance that we were good enough, but waiting for validation from someone who has chosen to walk away only delays your healing process. Closure doesn't come from another person. It comes from within. It comes from the understanding that you don't need someone else's approval to feel whole. You don't need their acknowledgement to move forward. What you need is to recognize your own value and to trust that the right person will appreciate you for exactly who you are. Breakups are painful. There's no denying that. but the pain doesn't have to define you. You have the power to choose how you respond to it. You can let it break you down, or you can use it as an opportunity to build yourself up stronger than before. The end of a relationship is not the end of your story. It's just the end of a chapter. And sometimes we need to close one chapter in order to begin the next. This doesn't mean forgetting the relationship or pretending it didn't matter. It means acknowledging that it had its place in your life, but it doesn't determine your future. Remember that healing takes time, and it's okay to feel hurt and confused in the process. But don't make the mistake of letting the breakup define your sense of self. You are not your past relationships. You are not defined by who stayed or who left. You are defined by how you choose to move forward, how you choose to learn from the experience, and how you choose to love yourself moving into the future. The biggest breakup mistake is letting it become an identity crisis, when in reality, it's simply a moment in time that will pass. Your worth remains intact, and your capacity to love and be loved is as strong as ever. A breakup doesn't reflect your worth. When a relationship ends, it can be tempting to take it personally and believe that the reason it didn't work out was because of something lacking within you. You might start to think that if you had just been different, if you had acted a certain way or done certain things, the relationship would have survived. But this kind of thinking is damaging and untrue. The reality is that a breakup is not about whether you are worthy or not. It's about whether the relationship between you and the other person was right at that moment in time. There are so many reasons why relationships come to an end. Sometimes people grow apart. Sometimes they discover that their values or goals no longer align. Other times, external circumstances play a role. But none of these things are a reflection of who you are as a person or your value. They are simply part of the complex reality of life and relationship. People change and evolve, and sometimes those changes mean that the relationship is no longer the best fit for both individuals. It doesn't mean that one person is less than the other. It doesn't mean that you are unlovable or that you'll never find someone else. Your worth is not determined by whether or not someone chooses to stay in a relationship with you. You are worthy of love and respect simply because you exist. You are deserving of happiness and connection just as much as anyone else. One person's decision to end a relationship does not take away your value. It doesn't diminish all of the qualities that make you unique and special. In fact, it's important to remember that even though a relationship may end, you still have all of the strengths, talents, and abilities that you had before the relationship started. Many times after a breakup, we make the mistake of thinking that our worth was tied to the relationship, that the love and validation we received from our partner was what made us valuable. But this is a misconception. Your worth does not come from someone else's approval or love. It comes from within. You are the one who determines your own value by how you treat yourself, by the standards you set, and by the way you choose to live your life. A relationship ending doesn't take that away from you. If anything, it's an opportunity for you to rediscover your own strength and to remind yourself of who you are outside of the relationship. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that because a relationship ended, you failed in some way, or that you weren't good enough. But relationships aren't about being good enough. They are about connection, compatibility, and timing. Sometimes even two great people just aren't the right match for each other. That doesn't make either of them unworthy. It just means that the relationship wasn't meant to last. And that's okay. It's not a reflection of your worth as a person. It's simply a part of life. One of the most important things you can do after a breakup is to remind yourself that your worth is not dependent on anyone else's opinion of you. Just because one person didn't see a future with you doesn't mean that no one will. Just because one relationship ended doesn't mean that all of your future relationships will end the same way. You are still the same person you were before the breakup, with all of the qualities that make you special. And just because this particular relationship didn't work out doesn't mean that you are any less worthy of love and connection. In fact, sometimes a breakup can actually be a step toward finding the kind of love that you truly deserve. It can be an opportunity for growth, for self-reflection, and for learning more about what you want and need in a relationship. It can help you to better understand your own worth and to set higher standards for how you want to be treated in the future. So rather than seeing the breakup as a reflection of your value, see it as a stepping stone on your journey toward a healthier and more fulfilling relationship. You were whole before the relationship and you are whole after it. Before you met that person, before you entered into that relationship, you were already a complete individual. You had your own identity, your own dreams, your own passions, and your own sense of self. The relationship may have been an important part of your life, but it didn't define the entirety of who you are. You existed as a whole person with your own thoughts, values, and experiences long before that relationship even began. And just because the relationship has ended, it doesn't mean that you've lost any part of that wholeness. You are still the same person with the same qualities and abilities that you had before. When a relationship ends, it's easy to feel like you're missing something or like a piece of you is gone. But the truth is that you haven't lost yourself. You are still complete within yourself. The love and connection you shared with another person was a beautiful experience, but it didn't make you whole. You were already whole when you entered into that relationship, and that hasn't changed just because it has ended. The end of a relationship doesn't mean the end of you as an individual. It may feel like a loss, but it's important to remember that you are still the same person with the same capacity for growth, happiness, and fulfillment. One of the biggest misconceptions people have after a breakup is the belief that they are somehow incomplete without the other person. They start to think that their ex was the missing piece of their life that made them feel whole, or that they need another person to complete them. But this is simply not true. You don't need anyone else to complete you because you are already whole on your own. A relationship can add joy and meaning to your life, but it doesn't define your worth or your completeness. You are enough just as you. The love you give and receive is a reflection of your capacity to connect with others, but it's not what makes you whole. In fact, when you realize that you are whole on your own, it empowers you to approach relationships from a place of strength rather than need. You no longer seek validation or fulfillment from someone else because you know that you already have everything you need within yourself. This doesn't mean that you don't want or deserve love and connection. It simply means that your sense of self-worth is not dependent on another person's presence in your life. You are not defined by your relationship status. You are defined by who you are as an individual, and that remains constant whether you are in a relationship or not. Being whole before and after a relationship means understanding that your identity is not tied to another person. You have your own unique journey, your own path to follow, and your own purpose in life. The relationship may have been a meaningful chapter in that journey, but it's not the entire story. You are still you with all of your strengths, talents, and potential. The end of the relationship doesn't take any of that away. It may change your circumstances, but it doesn't change who you are at your core. Breakups can often lead people to question their sense of self. They start to wonder who they are without the other person or without the relationship. But the truth is that you are still the same person with the same intrinsic value that you've always had. A relationship doesn't make you who you are, and losing it doesn't take away from the person you've become. You have always been whole, and you always will be. The relationship may have been an important part of your life, but it was never the source of your wholeness. That wholeness comes from within you, and it remains with you no matter what happens in your relationships. Understanding that you were whole before the relationship and you are whole after it allows you to move forward with confidence and self-assurance. It frees you from the need to search for completion in someone else, because you know that you already have it within yourself. It gives you the strength to heal from the breakup without losing sight of your own identity, and it helps you to remember that your value and worth are not tied to the success or failure of any one relationship. You are complete as you are, and no relationship can change that. Don't define yourself by what you lost. After a breakup, it's easy to focus on the loss. You may feel like you've lost a part of yourself because that relationship became such a significant part of your life. You shared experiences, dreams, and moments with that person, and now that it's over, it can feel like there's a void. But the mistake many people make is letting that sense of loss define their identity. They start to believe that who they are is tied to what they no longer have or what they've let go of. But this is not true. You are not defined by the relationship that ended or by the person who is no longer in your life. You are defined by who you are and what you continue to become. When a relationship ends, it's natural to feel the absence of what was familiar. But what you lost is not the sum total of who you are. The love and connection you shared with someone was a beautiful experience, but it does not define your entire existence. You are so much more than that relationship. You have your own journey, your own dreams, and your own individual identity that existed long before the relationship began and that still exists after it has ended. Focusing on what you lost narrows your perspective. It keeps you locked in the past and prevents you from seeing all the possibilities that still lie ahead of you. Many times after a breakup, we fall into the trap of believing that because we lost something important, we are somehow less than we were before. But this is a misunderstanding. What you lost was a part of your experience, not a part of your identity. Losing a relationship doesn't mean losing yourself. You are still whole. You are still capable of love and growth, and you are still the same person with the same potential that you had before. What you lost was a chapter in your life, but it wasn't the entire story. And just because that chapter is closed doesn't mean the rest of your story won't be full of joy, connection, and new beginnings. It's important not to let loss become the lens through which you view yourself. If you define yourself by what you lost, you're giving away your power. You're allowing a single event to dictate how you see yourself and how you approach the future. But you have the power to define yourself by how you choose to respond to that loss. Instead of focusing on what you no longer have, focus on what you've gained. Focus on the lessons you've learned, the strength you've built, and the opportunities for growth that come from moving forward. The end of a relationship is not the end of you. It's simply the beginning of a new phase in your life. If you allow yourself to be defined by loss, you risk missing out on the fullness of who you truly are. You are not just a person who experienced a breakup. You are a person with passions, talents, and dreams that are still alive and waiting for you to pursue them. The relationship may have been a significant part of your life, but it was not the entirety of your existence. There is so much more to you than what you had with that person. And there is so much more to your future than what you lost. By shifting your focus from what's gone to what's still present in your life, you open yourself up to new possibilities and new experiences that can bring even greater fulfillment. Sometimes we get so caught up in mourning what we lost that we forget to appreciate what we still have. You still have your own unique identity, your own sense of purpose, and your own capacity for love and connection. You still have the ability to create meaningful relationships and to live a life that reflects your values and your passions. Just because one relationship ended doesn't mean that you are any less deserving of happiness or that your future is any less bright. You are not defined by the love you once had, but by the love you continue to give to yourself and to the people who are still a part of your life. Rather than defining yourself by the loss of the relationship, choose to define yourself by your resilience, your strength, and your ability to move forward. The end of a relationship is not a failure. It's simply a part of life. People change, circumstances change, and relationships sometimes come to an end. But that doesn't mean that you are any less valuable or any less capable of creating a life that brings you joy. You are defined not by what you lost, but by what you do with the lessons you've learned and the new opportunities that lie ahead. Your life is still full of possibility, and your worth is still intact.